I'm with the Portage County Historical Society, and today we're going to go on a tour of the Portage County Historical Society. I'm standing next to the sign. We are presently on North Chestnut Street. This is our second home for the Portage County Historical Society. And over here we have the Carter House, which was our second home before we moved into the museum. Hi, I'm presently standing in front of the Carter House. The Carter House was built around 1835. It was one of the unique houses built in Ravenna Township. This was our second museum until we were able to build our big museum, which is housed just to the north of here. We'll come back later and we will look inside the Carter House with its unique findings. Hello everyone, we are now standing at the Earl G. Prohl Emmett J. Klein Clock Tower. This was built in 1972 by Emmett Klein with funds given by Earl G. Prohl. The reason why we have this tower is that up above was the 1882 Portage County Courthouse clock, which is presently being restored by Richard Whitmore of Ravenna. This particular piece was purchased by John Carson, longtime president of the Portage County Historical Society, in the 1990s in Mexico. This was a gift by him and his wife to the Historical Society for the Historical Society to remember them once they had passed. And so for the last 20 years, this stone has been here, this monument, this statue, and it signifies John and Beverly Carson, who passed some time ago. We are now at the Charlotte Strickland home. This brick home was built between 1865 and 1869. Charlotte Strickland and her ancestors lived in this house, as well as the Carter House next door. In this particular building is a museum of Victorian furniture and belongings, one which we will look at a later time. This is the Mahan New England barn. It is a barn that has a circulation of about 1810. It was taken off of Dolly Road and brought here on a flatbed truck in pieces and was put back together over a 3-year period. This is a very unique barn and we feel very happy to have it. The piece of equipment that we have over here to my right is a grater, a primitive grater that was used by steam propulsion as well as horsepower, and was given to us by the Rootstown Township some years ago. Here we have the John Campbell Land Office. John Campbell originally settled in Deerfield Township, made his way up to the four corners of the township of Rootstown, Edinburgh, Ravenna, and Charleston, where he built this particular brick building between 1809 to 1811. It's the second oldest brick building in Portage County. John Campbell at that time was sheriff of Portage County, and he had his inmates do some of the work on it for their board and keep. John Campbell went on in the War of 1812 to be a successful military commander, and after the War of 1812 was over, was promoted by the governor of Ohio to a general. So he was always known as General John Campbell. For many years, the Ford Seed Company was a prominent business in Northeast Ohio, providing seeds for all over the world. This particular building is the Alford building. They used to sit in Garrettsville, which was purchased by the Fords and was on their property. It seemed fitting that when the Ford Seed Company closed in the late 1960s, that this would be the place that we would house the Ford Seed Company. Inside of this building are many of the artifacts of the Ford Seed Company, its journals, its machines, and also some of its catalogs. So this is a very unique building, and I think I'll take you inside it. Here we get a look at pioneer America. The old cash registers that were used at the turn of the 20th century, the old telephones that were hand-wrung and generated for early communication, as well as some of the artifacts of the time, the bottles, the cans, the saws that were used for lumbering. As we move over here, we can see the different primitive files that were used by the Ford Seed Company to keep their catalogs. And up on the top, some of the books that they used over the years. Even a pot-belly stove that was used during the time. What's interesting about this building, and the reason why Mr. Ford had it, the original Mr. Ford, is because he was a photographer. And like Mr. Alford, he saw a need for it, and later on it was converted into a building that he used on the property for the Ford Seed Company. If you come over here for just a moment and take a little peek, you can see the old wooden desk with the chairs that were used at the time, along with a primitive typewriter, and yes, an old derby felt hat. The Stricklands had a very large farm that covered the 13 acres here, as well as across the street, which was later purchased by a family to run the second oldest golf course in Portage County, which is called Chestnut Hill. Here I am standing in front of the milk house that was used by the Stricklands. They kept cattle in this very large barn over here, which I will take you in a few minutes. But the cattle were housed in the bottom portion of the barn, and the milk was filtered across by pipeline into this building where it was canned and taken to market. This particular barn used to sit across the street where the golf course was to be built. It was built around 1900, so it stayed across the street for about 26 years. And in about 1926, the Moore family purchased from the Stricklands those lots across from the current Portage County Historical Society, the Stricklands and Carters, and brought the barn over here in pieces and reassembled it. It's very noticeable that it was reassembled because some of the beams are put on backwards. If you stand right, yeah. Here I am standing in one of our latest additions to the Portage County Historical Society. This is our pavilion that was built by Jim Workman, who was on the Board of Trustees for the Portage County Historical Society for about 6 years. And it's in honor of his wife and his mother. And so this is a place in where we can have events. We've had concerts here, and it's been a very enjoyable atmosphere. Way into Cy Plow with his books. This is the Cy Plow Memorial. Cy Plow was the youngest member of the original Board of Trustees for the Portage County Historical Society and was very instrumental in getting the society into play. In 1951, he was our first president at the age of 37 years of age. Cy Plow went on to become our curator for the museum and in many instances secured many different items for our museums over the years. He died in 1978, and this tree was carved by one of the world's finest tree carvers with a variety of different sizes of chainsaws, and was put together in 2007. In 2015, the Portage County Historical Society lost one of its most valued members, attorney Steve Wilson. Steve Wilson had his roots deep in Portage County and in the Historical Society. He was an Eagle Scout, and he really enjoyed the woods. He would come back here on many occasions and go for walks. And so the Portage County Historical Society felt it befitting to name these woods after him after his sudden death. We are now entering the pre-Columbian hypothetical Indian village. It is located on 2 acres of land, and its construction started in 2008 with anthropologist Robert Coots being the primary mover and shaker of having this built. If you'll follow me, you'll get a look at the first primitive wigwam that was built between 2008 and 2010, a wooden structure that has a series of 5 layers of grass on it. You'll have to come to the Historical Society to get a tour within the wigwam because it's rather dark inside and we do not have a fire built at this time. But the wigwam is 2 stories, and we built it with the thought of it lasting 5 years. Well, this is 2022, so you do the math. It has been standing now for 14 years, and it looks like it has another good decade left in it. Can you get out of this, block the sun with the trees somewhere?
Yeah, this is good.
You sure? Okay. Did you take a picture of this coming in?
Uh-huh.
This is the stone hut. The reason we call it the stone hut is because 5 foot of the wall around it is made out of stone, as was a common practice of some of the Native Americans. The rest of it is wood and dirt and sod. This was built over a course of 6 months in the year 2015, and has been another great place to have interactive educational programs that are put on by our anthropologists for the school system and for the surrounding organizations. Portage County Historical Society in Wilson Woods at the hypothetical Indian Village, we have lots of different educational devices for children and adults to learn from. One is the primitive stockade and the things that went into the stockade that is located over here to my left. And right here in front of me is a primitive grass holder, and we generally have a weaving machine set up that is 5 feet across and 5 feet down, in which the grasses for the wigwams are woven. Here you can take a look at a dream catcher. A dream catcher was often found in many of the Native Americans' artifacts. Indians were great believers in the earth and of believing in the power of dreams. And as I mentioned earlier, here is a primitive grass weaving machine. It looks very crude, but every inch of the wigwams that the last two that you saw, the grasses have been woven on this machine. Stands, again, a little over 5 foot tall. It's approximately 5 to 6 feet wide, and can make it a blanket of grass to make as a quilt over the frame of the wigwam. The Native Americans, they did have some enemies, even though they did converse among each other and they believed that the earth belonged to all. Here we see a stockade fence, which was very common among the Iroquois Indians, because this would be a deterrent to keeping their enemies out, as well as the wild animals. This is our latest wigwam, and as you can see, it is made from bark. Bark from hundreds of trees, and bark of all kinds can be found, from maples, from poplars, from oak trees. They are all found surrounding the frame of this particular wigwam. This wigwam was built in 2019 and took approximately 6 months to build, and is one of my favorites because it is a very strong and secure wigwam that probably has years of use in it. Also, during the fall, and this is late fall and many of the leaves have already fallen from the trees, but this wigwam gets decorated with a calico color and blanket of leaves, which is just absolutely amazing. I'd like to whet your appetite for coming out to the Historical Society, so I will bring you in to the bark wigwam. And here you can see the centerpiece where the fires are started and used for cooking and for warmth. And if we look up at the top, you can get an idea of the frame of the building. Every one of the wigwams, all three of them, do not have a nail in it, no metal in it. All of them have twine or rope that secures and fastens them together just as the Native Americans did. So come on out and get a better look at all three of them, and I'm sure our anthropologist will build a fire for you and bring the kielbasa. I'm going to take you to the cabin right now, and as we approach the cabin, it's like walking back into time. This particular cabin is of the 1820 variety. No, it was not a cabin that people lived in, but it was a tobacco house that was used in central Tennessee for over 100 or over almost 200 years before it was brought here to the Portage County Historical Society. It was going to be torn down and burned, and we had the contractor bring it to us as a donation. Portage County has its series of stone quarries. Ravenna had a stone quarry just to the west of town, and it was used for many, many years. And this is probably where this particular water trough or feeding trough was used. Start over. Here Portage County is known for having a large number of stone quarries. And here in front of us is a carved out piece of stone that is used both for a water trough or a feeding trough that is probably somewhere in the vicinity of 150 years old. It was given as a gift. I'm not sure who the giver was, but it certainly highlights the period in which we are observing this particular cabin. We do not have a name for this cabin. I'm sure we will at some point, but this cabin is a joy. You can see the craftsmanship in its restoration. And inside gives us an idea of how people lived many, many years ago at the dawn of the 19th century. The early cabins were very simple, usually had a dirt floor, but this one has a cut stone floor, which is absolutely beautiful and long lasting. As you can see, not much to it. We really don't have a ceiling in here, we just have a roof. And over here in the corner, we have a double bed, and it looks like a child's bed, but actually it's not. It's an adult bed because 150 years ago, people were a lot smaller than today's people, basically due to nutritional values. Here we have a comforter on, and underneath the comforter we have what is called a straw mattress. And underneath the straw mattress we have a rope instead of springs. And that brings me to the old saying, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Because if the ropes got loose and you were hanging just off the floor, the bugs would come up and they would bite you. But if you made the rope secure, your hind end wasn't down where the bugs would be biting. And so sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. And most cabins had a simple table. This is a little more ornate than normally would be. They would have a fireplace, and in later times, as we approach the 20th century, they would probably have a cast iron stove. Here we have a jenny, which was used to make clothing and other artifacts of the time. And of course, notice again, another basic chair that came from New England that you will find in just about everybody's barn because they were practical and they lasted forever. Here we have a trunk, has A and R on it, and inside the trunk looks like we have a pair of skates, wooden skates with blades on them. Amazing find. And of course, a packing trunk, which would be used to keep clothing, material, and other artifacts in. And a cabin would not be a cabin without a basin and a pitcher to wash the dishes or wash yourself. And I'm sure there would be a pop chamber in here somewhere, but I think we have it in one of the houses. A very large lean-to that's attached to the Mahan barn. This was built in 2011, and in it we have some of our prized possessions. Here we have a Case steam tractor, which was used for many, many years in Geauga County and was brought down and given to us. It does not run. It does not have the boiler in it to this day, but we have kept it pretty pristine over the years. And you can still see these steam tractors being run in Geauga County, Trumbull County. Also, if we want to go a little farther south, down in Stark County, Holmes County, and Wayne County. So they still use these monsters of power. Over here, we have a caisson. This caisson is an original 1916 caisson that was used in the First World War, was used most likely over in France, and it was given to us by the American Legion, Post 331, here in Ravenna. Believe it or not, this is one of our most valuable items here at the Portage County Historical Society, in that you cannot find these anymore. Only your finest museums have these on display. We also have a couple of harvesters here that we've had this one perhaps for 35 years, and we picked this up from the Columbiana Historical Society when they were going to get rid of it back in 2009. So these, you just don't see these anymore. Even among the Amish communities, you will not see these very often. At some point, someone decided to donate one of the outhouses that were on their property. Even in my youth, in the late 1950s and early 60s, many farms still had outhouses. And while this is no longer functional, you would not be able to use it. If you do need to use the restroom, we have very nice clean restrooms and sometimes porta potties on the campus of the Portage County Historical Society. The buildings we are looking at here are original. They belonged with the Strickland farm, a regular shed that was used as multi-purpose, and a corn crib. Over here to my right, you will also see a series of stones. Some of these are headstones, others are foundational stones, and we even have an old grist mill that has been carved out of stone from one of the neighboring quarries. This particular monument used to be at the Deerfield Circle. And sometime in the late 1950s, early 60s, a truck crashed through the circle and it shattered this, and it was in pieces. And they were going to throw it away. And so what we did is we were able to secure the monument. We brought it to the Historical Society and we put it back together. And this is where it sits today. And Deerfield has their own new monument that you will find if you visit it. These particular stones that I was speaking about, the foundational stones and some of the headstones, were parts of cemeteries that were in the area, particularly of Charlestown, Edinburgh, and Paris townships, where West Branch Reservoir was to be built. They were secured because they would now be under 20 feet of water if they had not been. This particular stone looks just like a normal stone, but this is the keystone to the Kent Opera House that was built in 1889. And a lot of people walk past this and don't look on this side. We probably should take this and move it so it can be seen a little bit better. But if we can get the camera on here, you will see 18. You'll see 18 on the stone, and buried into the ground is 89. 1889 Kent Opera House keystone. Barn that used to be located across the street before the Chestnut Hill Golf Course was built in 1926. And so it was brought over here on flat tops and it was put back together. I'm going to show you some of the items that we store and house within this top of the barn. Over here, we find a column. There are 3 more columns that are hidden here in the back. These particular columns belong to the Cuyahoga House. And the Cuyahoga House was built in the 1820s. And it was built over in Franklin Mills, which was later the village of Kent. And it was a canal boarding house at the time. It also has a history of being an underground railroad site for many years. These columns were purchased from the owner of the Cuyahoga House in 1907 when the Cuyahoga House was going to be torn down. It was put on a new home that was built directly across from West Main School property, and they remained there until the best of the carpenter ants and termites got to them, in which they were removed and they were donated to us by the Jack Cole Agency. Here we have the cupola, and this belonged on the 1868 Franklin Township Administration Building. And back in 2007, there was some disrepair to it due to a series of storms over the years. And so they were going to just get rid of it and put another one on. Well, the Portage County Historical Society thought it would be a unique thing to preserve for the time period, and we secured its transfer over here to our property, and we contracted with J.C. Jones of Ravenna to restore it. And it took him a couple of months, but he has restored it to its original condition. Here we have some of the remnants and artifacts from the original A.C. Williams Company that was located near the Pennsylvania Railroad on the south side of Ravenna on Hazen Street. These were given to us when A.C. Williams closed its doors in 1983 after being in business in Ravenna for 90 years. A.C. Williams, they were a foundry that made all different types of parts. In particular, of notoriety is that the old Singer sewing machines had a part in it that was manufactured by A.C. Williams that made the sewing machine hold up and be practical. Most people did not know this until several years after the Second World War, but the A.C. Williams Company was contracted by the U.S. government to make the castings on both of the atomic bombs that fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Again, some of the old foundry artifacts here, a blacksmith hand bellows, which are very hard to find in this day and age, and some of the primitive wood clamps and vices, as well as some of the tools that were used during the time. I see that you didn't have a place to put the broad axe, so they just laid it in with the casting tools. But this was found in a field on Peck Road in Ravenna Township about 15 years ago and donated to the Portage County Historical Society. This is a primitive bowling alley, and at the time it was the top of the line bowling alley that you could find in Northeast Ohio. It was built at the new Ravenna Ordnance Plant, otherwise known as the Ravenna Arsenal, in 1942. And the Ravenna Arsenal was a city in itself, having all kinds of buildings and activities on its grounds. The Ravenna Arsenal was 22,000 acres of land in which they had production sites in which bombs and shells were made, as well as igloos to store the bombs. But here we have a gift that has been loaned to us by the Windham Historical Society. This was the bowling alley. Original wooden benches for the teammates to sit and converse among themselves until their turn on the alley. An original ball cleaning machine. And back in the day, yes, when you had to keep your own score. And kind of gives you the idea of how old it is. As we turn the pages, they just get cleaner and cleaner as we get to the back. Some of the old rubber balls, not the new fashioned balls, but the old rubber balls, and some of the shoes of that era that go all the way back to 1942. Again, this is being housed for the Windham Historical Society that had no room to put this display on. Back in the day when you had a person be a pin setter, you had these set up down at the end of the alley. You rode your ball, and then you took your count, and then the pin setter would put them back in their proper place. They received a very modest wage for doing it, but the tips were always more than the wage. Here we have a Studebaker wagon. the famous wagons that built America, in which the name Studebaker ended up being a prominent car manufacturer up and through the 1960s. This was given to us by Robert Palmer, who happened to be in his barn that he purchased back in the 1960s in Streetsboro, Ohio. We have here a Conestoga wagon. Conestoga wagons are native to New England, and the people that had wealth, this was a way in which they would travel overland. We were able to secure this particular Conestoga wagon from a family in Geauga County who did not understand its significance or its importance, who were thinking about destroying it. And once we went up and we saw this beautiful piece of history, they decided that they would loan it to us rather than give it to us. The Conestoga wagon from that is perhaps 120 years old plus, and sitting in front of it is, for many years, the soapbox derby was prominent in Portage County. It was supported by the car dealerships and also by the Portage County newspaper, the Record Courier. This was donated recently by Daniel Barrick. Dan Barrick was the 1968 champion of the soapbox derby here in Portage County, and his car was built so well that it was used for many years as a demo model. Generally speaking, most soapbox derby cars are destroyed after their use because they don't want anybody else using the vehicle. So Dan has provided this. We have not taken it into our museum yet, but it will have a place in the museum up on top. And over here, just so you get an idea, these haven't gone anywhere. We've got his original soapbox derby helmet. We've got the pants he wore. We got articles and newspapers and everything else in here that Dan wanted to give the museum. It's hard to believe that 1968 was 54 years ago. And last but not least, for our outside tour today, I would like to show you this item. This is a railroad safe. This was most likely from the Erie Railroad. The Erie Railroad has a prominent history here in Portage County. These are very rare. These are the types of safes that Butch Cassidy and a Sundance Kid could not destroy. And so they cost a great deal of money, and they're of great value today. And this is one of our treasured items here at the Portage County Historical Society. It doesn't look like much, but it can keep treasures like an Egyptian tomb. Thanks for being a little long-winded today, but I tried my best while the weather was decent to give you a brief tour of the campus of the Portage County Historical Society. And at a later date, we will make another video on our two homes and our museum. So until then, take care and goodbye.